Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Tinted Visors podcast. Coming back at you with episode 21. Today, we're going to start with our recaps. Then, we're going to look at some playoff teams and discuss some pretenders and contenders. Then, we're going to look at some ideal playoff matchups, just talk about the most exciting ones, the ones that intrigue us the most. And finally, we're going to wrap it up with some trivia. That being said, let's get it going. But before we get going, as always, we have card of the day. I'll go first today. We have a Mason McTavish French Young Gun variation. Actually packed this one. I don't remember when. I think it was last summer. But yeah, initially just thought it was a normal Young Gun, and then just having it being the French one is just a bonus. A little bit rarer, adds a bit to the value. Doesn't mean a lot to me, but Mason McTavish is Canadian, was on those World Junior teams, so it is kind of cool to pull his rookie card. Hoping he gets even better as a player, having a pretty solid year on a loaded Young Ducks team.
Super rare card. It just kind of sucks that the series these days are getting sort of overproduced, that the value kind of drives that down. But I'll go with regular Young Guns, and we'll do an Anthony Cirelli. Like I said, big fan of Anthony Cirelli and his game. Really hard worker, really underrated piece for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I am in search of a few of his bigger cards, trying to get, the Cup RPA or something big like that. I do have another Young Gun. It's rated 9 PSA. Pretty cool piece to my collection. But yeah, that's my card. Running out of cards out here, so hopefully I can get back home soon and restock. But maybe I'll have to buy something. Maybe rip open a box and have something to show.
Yeah, Anthony Cirelli, great player. Very hardworking guy, like you said. Great two-way game. And flies under the radar. He's a big piece of Tampa's depth. And just shouting out some of my buddies, he's a Bill Crothers secondary school alumni. So fun fact for you.
Just going straight into some news for you guys. The Detroit Red Wings are on a 6-game losing streak, and it's showing in practice. There's a video of two players going at it, Lucas Raymond and Ben Sherratt, going at it in front of the net. Not really many punches thrown, but it was getting pretty aggressive. Had to get some teammates to split them apart. And, they are in, the final stretch of the season, and they're playing some of the worst hockey that they have all season. They're missing Dylan Larkin right now. None of their star players are performing up to what they should be playing right now, including goaltenders. It's not looking good for them. They really needed to step up, and it's just not happening.
And you mentioned that losing streak right before it. They had won 6 in a row, and they looked like they were playing the best hockey of their season, and then they do this 6-game losing streak. And you mentioned missing Dylan Larkin. He wears that C for a reason. You wonder what's going on in that locker room. Dylan Larkin might have been in there, been able to de-escalate and kind of calm everyone down. When you've lost 6 in a row, all you want to do is win. Tensions are high, and stuff like this boils over, like we saw in practice. So they are just outside of a wild card spot right now, trailing Tampa and the Isles. However, they still have some time. Hopefully they can bounce back from this and, still make the playoffs.
Yeah, they got a lot of time and a lot of skill. It's really possible. They just need to dial it in and get themselves in a good position. But speaking of, an injury to Dylan Larkin, there's also an injury to Thatcher Demko. It's just week to week right now. I'm not sure how long that's actually going to be. But is there confidence in Casey DeSmith, even for just a couple games? Are the Canucks, in a good position right now?
Yeah, I think we've been overperforming all season long. So we can cut them some slack here, even with Casey DeSmith in net. I still think there is some potential to, there's a chance to win night in, night out with the way the Canucks have been playing all year. It's obviously a downgrade from Demko, but Casey DeSmith is serviceable. He is an NHL goalie. So we will see how the Canucks play. They're on their massive homestand right now, but hoping Demko recovers quickly and gets back on the ice soon.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too long, but say it's 2, maybe 3 weeks. Does that take a hit to the Vezina? Is Connor Hellebuck sneaking in there after that?
It's tough to say. The Vezina race has been good all year, and it's safe to say that, Demko was the front runner for the first few months of the season. But Hellebuck's really turned it on, as have the Jets, so I do think currently the Vezina is Hellebuck's trophy to lose. So I do really hope Demko can still squeak into that top 3, but this injury does take a hit. He has a lot less time to kind of prove why he deserves the award.
Facing Connor Hellebuck and the Jets is the Nashville Predators, and in their last 13 games, they are 11-0-2, have not lost in regulation in their last 13. Very impressive. That's good for the first wildcard spot. Interestingly enough, they have more points than LA, who is sitting in the 3rd seed in the Pacific. which kind of makes you think whether they should go back to that 1-8 format or whether they're doing, whether they should stick with the wild card. But, Nashville, they're turning it on at the right time of the season. They could squeak in, but, they're going to play a first seed, and both first seeds right now are looking like tough opponents.
Yeah, with the heater they're on, you mentioned their record 11-0-2 in their last 13. My question to you is if Nashville can keep this up and makes it into the playoffs as a wild card, what are their chances against a team like Winnipeg or even Vancouver?
It doesn't look great for them, at least. I think pretty much every team that are in those top seeds, Colorado, Vancouver, even Edmonton, Dallas, it's pick your poison. You're going to end up with a very tough opponent either way. They could steal a few games. I think UC Saros could steal, at least a couple. So obviously there is, hope. I mean, you wouldn't go into playoffs just thinking you're going to lose, right? You're going to go in with some confidence, try to, upset one of the top teams. And I mean, you look at Florida last year, they upset the number one seed, right? So it is always possible. We'll see what happens. They're going to need big performances by, like I said, UC Saros and Philip Forsberg, even Roman Yossi as well.
Just moving on to the final bit of news for you guys this week. Chicago and San Jose, both mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, the only two teams at the time of recording. Kenny, where do you see Macklin Celebrini going, and where do you like his fit for NHL teams right now?
Out of those two teams, I would rather, San Jose win the lottery, just because you don't want to see, the same team getting two first overall picks back to back. But if I had to pick, I'd rather neither of those teams. I think it could be really cool to be, an Anaheim Duck. I think they have a really bright future, and I think, they have some pretty good odds right now. Even out east, there's a lot of teams that are sitting at the bottom. Ottawa Senators, he's a Canadian boy. Maybe he would go, there if they win the lottery pick. But yeah, I mean, the two teams that are eliminated first are pretty much the two teams I would like to see him in at the least. So it's not too exciting for me.
Like you said, you don't want to see a team like Chicago get back-to-back first overall picks, especially to an organization like the Blackhawks, who not only have had some interesting things, some darker things happen to their organization that they've covered up, but also their success in the 2010s. Like I'd like to see a different team kind of start their own dynasty instead of having a team like the Blackhawks bounce back. But like Connor Bedard from Vancouver, Macklin Celebrini also from Vancouver, would be very cool to me to see two Vancouver boys become one of the most electric young duos in the league.
We're getting to the time of the year where all we talk about are the playoffs. And every year there are very strong teams who crash out, and they're very strong teams that make it all the way. So it is time to play contenders versus pretenders. First, right out of the gate, we're going to go with the Boston Bruins, currently second in the division, and I do think they stay there come the end of the season. However, I do think they are a pretender this year. I don't see them going anywhere past the second round. I just don't think the depth's there anymore. The 2019 roster was very strong, and I think that was their best chance at a cup. And just ever since, with losing Bergeron, losing Krejci, that depth has just, become very, very thin. And I just don't think they have it in them. Very good regular season team, but I don't think they'll bring it come playoff time.
Yeah, to me the Boston Bruins are absolutely pretenders this year. It's just their center depth. Morgan Geekie and Charlie Coyle in your top six is just not cutting it come playoff time. It helps to really have a bona fide number one center in your lineup during the playoffs. It's something that we've seen, teams that win the cup have very commonly. So the Bruins just not having that. They have the goaltending, they have the defense, both very elite. And if Jim Montgomery is willing to run a goalie rotation this year between Ullmark and Swayman, keeping them both fresh, I do see them, maybe making it to the second round. But to me, I believe their first round exits. Another red flag about this team is just their record. They have 15 losses in overtime or in a shootout this year. So their ability to close out games in crunch time is just, it scares me a lot. And, with some of these games going to overtime and having everything on the line, I just don't think the Bruins have it in them to, make a run this year.
They are second in the division, and they sit second to the Florida Panthers, which is our next team, and I believe they are a true contender this year. Sitting first in the Atlantic, I think they will finish first and therefore get one of the wild card teams. They were a very good team even before the trade deadline, and then they went out to go pick up Vladimir Tarasenko and some more depth in Kyle Okposo, and I think that just strengthens their team even more. Such a very underrated defensive core, one of the best in the league, I think. Sam Reinhart, amazing year. Same with Barkov, even Matthew Tkachuk. Only thing for me is maybe their goaltending, maybe some uncertainty there. But Bobrovsky did bring it to the playoffs last year, so hopefully that will be the case again. I see this team exiting no earlier than the third round and maybe even another finals appearance.
The Cats are legit this year. They didn't have much to address at the deadline, but they still added, bringing in Vladimir Tarasenko for a great price and a great veteran in Kyle Okposo. This team looks ready. And, coming off of that, Cinderella story run last year, beating the Bruins and stuff, I think, like you said, they're ready to run it back. Bobrovsky has a track record of showing up in the playoffs, so I don't think goaltending is a concern. Brandon Montour is healthy, and if Aaron Ekblad can get healthy as well, I think this Cats team is primed to make another run. Like you said, I think the floor is definitely the conference finals with a very good chance to make the cup finals again.
Flipping over to the Metro Division, and we're talking about the first seed there with the New York Rangers. I think they're a contender as well. I think, last year was a little bit of a fluke with them exiting in the first round, with them going to the conference finals just the year before that. And I do think they can run it back and make it all the way to the conference finals again. They have a very strong goaltending tandem. I think, even if Shesterkin has, a couple bad games, Quick is there to, catch him and, really supply that goaltending for the Rangers. Defensive core is really, really strong as well. Um, the forward core, they added a couple center depth pieces. I would have liked to see them add maybe a couple more, maybe a nice scoring punch. But they have a lot of depth there, and I think they can bring it all the way to the third round. The one thing for me is just having to make it past the Hurricanes, which would be the only challenge for them to get to that point. But I think they have it in them. They played a couple nights ago against the Hurricanes. It was a very good game, and they did come out with the win. But yeah, for me, true contenders.
Yeah, gonna agree with you there. I do think last year was a one-off against a hot Devils team, taking them to 7. But this is like basically the exact same Ranger team running it back. Plus, like you mentioned, Alexander Wimberg and Jack Roslovich. This Ranger forward core is better than ever. They're getting production from their depth they have all year. The defense, like you said, is really strong. And even Igor Shesterkin, hasn't had a great year, but it's still Igor Shesterkin. He's going to show up in the playoffs. And if he doesn't, you always have that safety net. Jonathan Quick is their backup. A seasoned vet who knows what it takes to win. He can always step in between the pipes for 1 game, 2 games, maybe even the rest of their run if Igor isn't cutting it. So to me, I agree. I do believe they're contenders. I think they can get over the hump this year, beat the Carolina Hurricanes, and match up with the Panthers in the conference finals.
Going out west, we'll go to the Central Division. Probably the biggest winner of trade deadline day, the Colorado Avalanche. Caden, let me ask you, contenders or pretenders?
We keep saying contender, but, it really feels like it. It feels like the Avs are once again going to be the real deal this year. Nathan MacKinnon has been absolutely unbelievable. Top of the league in points, looking like a Hart Trophy, maybe even an Art Ross for him. Mikko Rantanen is doing Mikko Rantanen things. Cale Makar is in contention for the Norris, and those moves they made at the trade deadline, acquiring Sean Walker, being able to dump Ryan Johansson's contract, and then even getting Casey Middlestat to really solidify that center depth, sliding him in on that second line is an absolutely perfect fit. So to me, I think the Avs are as dangerous as ever. You're always going to have a chance when you have that core, Rantanen, MacKinnon, and Makar. So to me, I think they're real contenders. I think at the very least they're making it to the conference finals, if not the cup final.
Same with the Rangers. I think, last year was just a one-off coming up against a very surprising Kraken roster. But, I've never really thought they really filled that Landeskog hole until they brought in Casey Middlestat. Nichushkin is back, and he's scoring just like he was before he took a leave. And, I think this is one of the deepest rosters they've had, maybe even deeper than the team that brought them the cup. Obviously, they had Kadri back then, but, very good roster. Goaltending would be maybe iffy for me, but Georgiev has, backstopped them for the past couple of years, so I think they have confidence in him. And yeah, like you said, third round, I think would be disappointing for them. I think it's Cup Finals and Stanley Cup or bust for them.
Moving on, staying in the Central Division, we have the Winnipeg Jets. Kenny, are the Winnipeg Jets contenders or pretenders?
I think they are pretenders. Just with the way the division is laying out, Colorado will finish first, and they will either get second or third, but regardless, they will play the Dallas Stars. And just going up against them in the first round, I don't think Winnipeg has what it takes. Credit to them, they did pick up a lot of pieces. I just don't think it's enough, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go out in the first round.
This Winnipeg team is kind of sending me mixed signals. They won game 1 against Vegas last year and then proceeded to get gentlemen's swept out of the first round, losing in 5. I really like the moves they made at the deadline, acquiring Tyler Toffoli. That was kind of out of left field. Wasn't really expecting him to go there. The forward depth is there. They have the number one goalie in Connor Hellebuck. Their defensive depth kind of worries me a bit. Yes, they have Josh Morrissey, but then, kind of who's on the blue line after that. And it really just comes down to matchup. It looks like they'll be matched up against the Dallas Stars. And to me, I like the Dallas Stars roster a lot more than Winnipeg's. So to me, they're going to be pretenders as well, and I do see them being a first round exit.
Let's get the elephant out of the room. We'll ask the Canucks fan about the Canucks. Caden, Vancouver, are they pretenders or are they contenders?
This one's tough. To me, I gotta say it. I think they are contenders. Coming off of the last time they were in the playoffs was 2020, coming off of the bubble run and bubble Demko. We haven't seen this Canuck team in the playoffs since then. But yeah, there's no real reason to say that they're pretenders other than the lack of experience, led up front by Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, Brock Besser's having a career year. You have your number one defenseman in Quinn Hughes, and if Thatcher Demko's healthy, I think why not the Canucks? I think there's no reason why they can't make a run. I see them at least getting out of the first round, and could even go to the conference finals. Going to the Cup finals, I like the Avs a little bit more than them. Even a team like the Dallas Stars, I like their roster quite a bit more, and not to mention the Vegas Golden Knights, who they'd maybe see in the second round. But to me, they are contenders. We will see how far they're able to go. But yeah, I think they have the forward depth to compete with the league's best.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, there's no reason for us not to believe that they can go far, especially if Vegas does miss out. I think the Pacific Division is probably one of the weakest ones, and I think they could have an easy route to the third round, in which they would probably match up with the Colorado Avalanche. Tough game last night, but they did keep it close, so it would be a very good series. And I think a third round exit would be disappointing. I think they are shooting for the Cup finals, and I think it's Cup or bust for them as well. They went all in on Elias Lindholm, and who knows what's going to happen with Roenick for next year. So I think this is probably the best roster that they've had in years, and probably one of the best rosters they're going to have for a while. But speaking of Vegas, we're going to see whether they can first of all make it in. But if they do, they're for sure contenders. One of the best rosters on paper. They just have to get there. They just have to get to the playoffs and get Mark Stone back. After that, they're pretty much unstoppable, picking up a bunch of the top trade candidates this deadline, and we'll see. The biggest thing for me is just making it. As long as they can make it in, they're gonna have one of the best chances to make it to the finals. Again, it's Cup or bust for them, but yeah, I think the true contender.
Like you say, step one is actually making the playoffs first. And, there's all this focus on Vegas kind of circumventing the cap, acquiring Tomas Hertl for strictly the playoffs and putting him on LTIR right away. There's questions about whether Mark Stone's going to be healthy for the playoffs because apparently he's done for the season. But yeah, this Vegas team has to really rally and make the playoffs first. And I think they will. Tough to say as a Vancouver fan, but I do think they managed to get in the playoffs. Jack Eichel, Jonathan Marchessault, it's enough. It's enough to carry them. Shea Theodore is healthy as well, and they're getting the goaltending. So yeah, Vegas, I see them as true contenders, especially if they make the playoffs. And yeah, once they do get in, if they get in as a wild card or the P3, they're going to be giving the other team fits in the first round.
And last but not least, the Edmonton Oilers. For me, I think they're pretenders. I just don't think this roster is as good as it has been in a couple of years. I think the deadline, the trade deadline, was very disappointing. They didn't really go out and get much apart from Adam Henrique. But I think that first could have been used for something a little more useful to them. I think defensive depth, not really something to write home about, and I don't think the goaltending is super stable. Skinner has been playing very well, but we all know what he was like at the start of the season. And just the forward group, I don't think they're deep enough. But we'll see. If you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on the team, you always have a chance to win. But I would see them maybe making it out of the first. If they match up against LA, I think it's for sure getting out of the first round. But second round, I don't think they're going to make it any further than that.
For me, the Oilers, it's a tough one. Just, like you said, McDavid and Draisaitl. And it's like McDavid has a chip on his shoulder, so I'm going to have to say contender. It almost feels like this may be his last year in Edmonton if they don't succeed this year. Zach Hyman is having a career year. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is producing on his own line. And seeing Draisaitl and McDavid on different lines and still producing, still winning games, it's a really good sign for the Oilers. I'm not a fan of that Henrique pickup for the first rounder. You're picking up a 34-year-old for that price. I think, like you said, there were much better ways to spend that first round pick. But to me, I think once the Oilers get in, I think there's definitely a chance that this could be their year to at least go to the conference finals again or even the cup finals for the first time with McDavid.
But yeah, let us know what you guys think. We'll see how it all plays out. We just named like 4 or 5 teams who we all said are going to make it to the finals. So obviously, half of them are not going to even make it that far. But we'll see what happens. A lot of really good teams in the regular season. We'll see which ones are legit come playoff time.
We talked about pretenders or contenders. Let's talk about some playoff matchups we want to see. Kenny, what is the number one matchup you would like to see come playoff time?
The number one, and I think, very, very possible with the way the standings are right now, I think Florida Tampa would be probably one of the best series, not even in the first round, but of an entire playoff. In past seasons, Tampa has come out of pretty much every single time they've met up, but the scripts flip, right? Florida is coming in as the favorite, Tampa as the underdog. It will not take only 4 games for Tampa to win, unlike a couple of years ago. I think this could be a very, very likely a 7-game series. Florida is a lot stronger team. They have a lot of pieces. We'll see if Tampa is deep enough. They did lose a lot of grit as well with Perry and Maroon moving on. And Florida does have a lot of guys who can get under your skin, like Nick Cousins, Ryan Lomberg, even Matthew Tkachuk. But I think it'll be a very, very cool story. Interestingly, Duclair is switching sides in that rivalry, so that'll be a funny story. But I think that'll be one of the top series in the first round for sure.
You talk about the Lightning, it only makes sense if I talk about the Vancouver Canucks, a matchup I would love to see. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I would love to see the Canucks go against the Golden Knights again. For those who aren't familiar, Vegas was actually the team to knock out the Canucks in 2020. And I'd love to see this just because I think it would be a much fairer fight. Vegas does have, that depth, and they're going to take these guys off of LTIR and circumvent the cap. But I think the Canucks have a legit chance this year to upset them. It was tough in 2020 watching Bubble Demko have to make, 45 saves just for the Canucks to win. Just watching Vegas absolutely bombard them. It was a tough watch. But, this year, I think it's a fresh Canucks team. They're excited to make the playoffs again. And I think it would be a great series. Like you said, I think one of the best in the playoffs. I think it could easily go to 7, and it could really go either way.
Another series I'd love to see, and very possible as well, is Toronto-Boston. Both of them are the 2nd and 3rd seeds, so even if they do flip, they'll still end up playing each other. But the most recent rivalry goes back 2013 when they gave up that 4-1 game lead in the 7th game of the series to Boston. And ever since then, Boston's had their number in the playoffs, knocking them out a couple times since. But this is one of Toronto's strongest rosters. They did come out of the first round last year, so they have that now. So we'll see how this shows up. We just talked about Boston's depth or lack thereof. So maybe that is a factor, and maybe Toronto can exploit that. I would love to see Ryan Reeves injected into the lineup for Game 1, sort of get some of that grit in. I would love to see Domi and Bertuzzi step up and really sort of drop the gloves, make some hits, do whatever. I think this will be a very exciting series. Honestly, not a fan of either team, so it wouldn't really matter who goes home as long as one of them is out by the first round. But you can't deny the rivalry, and you can't deny the excitement that both teams would have.
My other playoff series that I would love to see, it would take both teams getting to the conference finals, but I would love to see Colorado Edmonton again. Colorado kind of walked through them last time they matched up back in 2022. But, I think McDavid, like I said earlier, has a chip on his shoulder, something to prove, and I think he definitely wants to win with Edmonton. So I think this would be an absolutely crazy matchup. I think Colorado definitely has the upper hand, but Edmonton can definitely go goal for goal with them with their forward depth. Guys like Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins stepping up, even Evander Kane. They do have a lot more scoring punch than people realize. So I would love to see this series. I think it would be a very high-scoring one. A lot of speed with McKinnon and McDavid on the ice. So yeah, that's my second favorite playoff matchup I would love to see this year.
We reached the trivia portion of the episode, and Caden, I will go first. A couple weeks ago, I did for you the number 1 active point scorers for each nation, and you were not too pleased with your performance. So we're gonna run it back. We're gonna do a couple of those nations. All I want is anyone from the 2 to 4 slot.
Okay. Okay.
All right, but I'm not going to remind you who's number one,
Okay.
and you have 3 lives. All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
All right. So, Canada.
Before we start, it's kind of funny because I was studying the film. This was traumatizing. This was bad. So I studied the film. Let's see how we do. Canada. Okay. 2-4. Steven Stamkos.
Steven Stamkos is number 2. I'll take that. Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
We're gonna go Russia.
Russia. So Ovi's 1. Evgeny Malkin.
Evgeny Malkin is the number 2 spot.
Okay.
Kucherov and Panarin were 3 and 4.
Okay.
United States.
United States. Joe Pavelski.
Joe Pavelski's there. Yeah, number 3. We're gonna go Sweden.
Sweden. Who was number?
This one you had trouble with, number 1.
Yeah. Okay. So Backstrom was number 1.
PTSD's kicking in with Backstrom.
And you know what? Erik Karlsson.
Erik Karlsson's number 2. There you go.
Bang.
You're 4 for 4. We're gonna go with Finland.
Finland. I think it was Barkov, number 1. I think so. You know what? I think I'm just gonna go with Mikko Rantanen.
That is your number 2. Yeah.
Bang.
Sebastian Aho is number 3, and then Mikael Granlund's number 4.
Really?
Finland right now. Wrap it up. Probably the hardest one of them all. We're gonna go with Czechia.
Czechia. Tomas Hertl has to be on that list.
Tomas Hertl, the number 2 spot. There you go. Palat, and then Pavel Zacho is number 4. Doesn't matter. 6 for 6. You studied the tape. You studied it well. There you go.
We get to bounce back. I get my revenge. Thank you for the opportunity. So for me, just a career path here. Currently playing. They are not retired yet. So we're going to go, starts with the Buffalo Sabres, the Montreal Canadiens, the Anaheim Ducks, the Minnesota Wild, Philadelphia Flyers.
Oh my God, I know it. Do I know it? Is it Nick Delorier?
It is Nick Delorier. I didn't realize how obvious those last 2 teams sounded, even the Ducks. But yeah, Nick Delorier. Oh, you got that pretty quick.
I'll hit you right back with a career path. Right up until last season.
Okay.
We're going to go with the LA Kings, Philadelphia Flyers, the Nashville Predators, the New Jersey Devils, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Ends his career with the Leafs. Some old guy they signed to a league min for him to play in the bottom 4, which sounds like something the Leafs would do in the bottom 6.
A good theory, yeah.
Kenny, where would you say this player had his best years?
I'm going to tweak that answer a little bit. I would disregard everything from Nashville to Buffalo.
So Kings, Flyers, Leafs, huh?
Where's the smile?
Okay.
Lay it on me. Let me hear it.
See, I think you're right. I vaguely remember the Preds. I do not remember the Sabres or the Devils at all. So I think that really helped. We're gonna go Wayne Simmons.
I'll give you Wayne Simmons. There you go.
Simmons.
Honestly, I remember the Devils, Nashville, Buffalo. Honestly, it was just a surprise when I even looked it up just today. So.
All right, Kenny. My last trivia question of the day for you. I'm gonna give you 3 players, and this player has played with all 3 of them. All you have to do is just tell me who the player is. The first player is Tyler Myers. The second player is Tyson Barrie.
Okay.
And the third player is Elias Pettersson.
So he's played for Vancouver for sure. Myers is Buffalo, Winnipeg, Vancouver. And Barrie is Colorado, Toronto, Edmonton, Nashville. Technically, he could have played with both Pettersson, Myers, and Vancouver. This works. I don't know if this is the guy you're thinking of.
Okay.
Is it Luke Shen?
I guess Luke Shen would work.
Is that not who it is?
It's not Luke Shen. Not the guy I'm thinking of. So, as an added bonus, I can give you another teammate, I guess, because that's what you did for me last time you did this one. So another teammate, Kirill Kaprizov.
Minnesota and Vancouver for sure. In recent years, this is kind of crazy. You ready?
I'm ready.
Is it Nick Patan?
Oh my God, it's Nick Patan. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I was not expecting that at all. You hit the arrow on the head with Nick Patan. That is crazy. But yeah, his career path started with the Jets, the Maple Leafs, the Canucks, with the Wild, and now he's currently in the Rangers. He's on the Rangers AHL team. So wow, he really showing off the knowledge. That's a really good shout. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is crunch time in the NHL. Playoffs are right around the corner, so we do have a lot of exciting content coming soon. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube and follow us on all our socials. Got some cool stuff coming. All right, guys. See you guys next episode.
Gun you down, oh you know she wild inside emoji, oh you got a frown. Tomato to my haters, hope you get lost.